Good evening to Dr. Sharon and all my fellow classmates. We are from Group 4 and I'm Ramya Punyamurthy and my metric number is 202964. My group members are Ashifa Najwa binti Muhammad Kamal and Vera Carol Yapngat Min. So, what is discrimination based on language and how does it look like? So, here is the definition of language discrimination. Basically, language discrimination occurs when a person is treated unfairly because of their native language or other aspects of their language ability. For example, if the workplace has a speak English only policy but the employee's native language is not English, the employee may be subjected to language discrimination. In a word, language discrimination is the unjust treatment of someone because of the way he or she speaks, which includes an accent, vocabulary, and syntax. For this critical review assignment, we have chosen two articles. Article 1 is about not professional enough to be a therapist, international therapist experience of language discrimination, while in Article 2 is about linguistic discrimination in an English language teaching program, voices of the invisible others. Now, we move on to the issues stated in these articles. Issue that we found in Article 1. The language limitation did not prevent the therapist from effectively providing therapy to American clients, but they were viewed as lacking professional competence due to their accent, which affects therapist confidence in session. Furthermore, therapists who speak English as a second language experienced more alienation compared to international therapists whose English was native. According to American Association for Marriage and Family Therapy in year 2015, although marriage and family therapists are expected to be trained in how to provide culturally competent services to clients and not discriminate against them, there are currently no specific guidelines regarding how MFT programs should train therapists to handle and cope with clients' aggression or discrimination against international therapists. Language barriers for foreign therapists have been identified as a hindrance to effective therapy. International Marriage and Family Therapy MFT students face language and cultural prejudice from clients. As a result, there is an urgent need to explore this issue. Issue that we found in Article 2. The researcher was drawn to the extra visibility given to high proficiency, which is HP, students by professors in the program at Fundación Universitaria Luis Amico in Medellin. Professors automatically tended to ignore low proficiency, which is LP, students by sustaining long conversations with HP students and reducing opportunities for LP students to get involved in class discussions. The researcher also observed that LP students remained quiet and ended up segregating themselves by forming groups with similarly performing classmates. Moreover, when students gave oral presentations, LP students panicked and were apprehensive about speaking in public, while HP students performed successfully during class, thus gaining preferred attention from professors. That is why this study arose from the need to give a voice to invisible students and deconstruct power relations at stake inside the English language classroom. Now we move on to the main objectives of the articles. The purpose of Article 1 is to examine the experiences of international MFT students in the US facing language and cultural bias, prejudice, or discrimination from their clients while Article 2 is to describe how linguistic discrimination influences students' academic performance in the English teaching program at Funlam. Research questions of the articles. Article 1 has 4 research questions, same goes with Article 2. In Article 1, A. How do international therapists perceive or experience being judged or discriminated against in regard to their English with a foreign accent by clients? B. How do international therapists perceive or experience being judged or discriminated against in regard to their ethnicity by clients? C. What are some common reactions when they perceive being discriminated against? And D. How do they cope with this experience? While in Article 2, A. How does linguistic discrimination influence students' academic performance in the English teaching program at Funland? B. How can language professors help LP students gain self-confidence and develop language accuracy? C. How can HP students help maintain a collaborative environment in class? And D. How can a collaborative environment be encouraged in the language classroom? So, these are the research questions raised by the researchers in both articles. Now, we move on to the theoretical framework. In Article 1, the researcher was using the language subordination process model proposed by Lippy Green in year 2012, while in Article 2, there is no any theory or model stated in order to conduct their research. Now, I will explain about the methodology part for both articles. Both articles are using qualitative methods in conducting the research. The first subheading is about data collection. In Article 1, only one interview was conducted in person on a university campus and 7 interviews were conducted through Zoom, and the researcher used Mostaka's 1996 phases when conducting heuristic research, which include initial engagement, immersion, incubation, illumination, explication, and creative synthesis. In Article 2, first, the literature on linguistic discrimination was examined to become familiar with previous studies on the topic. Second, class observations were scheduled based on observers' availability. Third, LP students were selected to be interviewed. Finally, the professors whose classes were observed were interviewed. Next is data analysis. In Article 1, data analysis was guided by the language subordination process model proposed by Lippy Green in year 2012. Heuristic inquiry research methods are used by the researcher to explore international MFT students' experiences in working with American clients. In Article 2, 5 steps proposed by Burns in year 1999, assembling data, coding data, comparing data, building interpretations, and reporting outcomes are used by the researcher. For the sample, in Article 1, 8 International Marriage and Family Therapy MFT students were chosen, which consist of 1 PhD student and 7 master's degree students, with 3 in their first year and 4 in their second year. All the participants identified as being from Taiwan, Malaysia, China, and India. While in Article 2, 104 students and 5 professors were chosen for this study. Of those 104 students, only 6 students from the LP level were selected for interviews, although only 12 of them were actually interviewed. All of them were members of the English teaching program at Funlam. The male and female students were aged between 20 to 35 with diverse linguistic levels. The professors were both male and female between the ages of 40 and 50 years. The last part will be the instruments. In Article 1, interviews are used as the instrument, while in Article 2, interviews and journals are used as the instruments. So, that is all from me. Next, my group member Ashifa will continue with the slides.
Hi, my name is Ashifa. My metric number is 203824, and now I'll be continuing the presentation, starting with findings. Now, findings in article number 1. ASL therapists claim that language play a greater influence in their interactions with clients over ethnicity or race, which due to foreign status, all of the international therapists admit that they try to adapt to American culture because they feel like outsiders. Clients frequently judge professionalism and counseling competency primarily on international therapists' English skills. Discrimination and prejudice against ASL therapists are often seen in clients' evaluation of their expertise and counseling reliability. ESL therapists are often struggled with no-shows, transfers, and dropouts. ESL therapists believe their clients are quick to pass judgment and conclude their professionalism after hearing their accents and are less tolerant of their mistakes. Lastly, when international therapists receive negative review from the clients, it is common for them to start feeling frustrated and question themselves. Now let's move on to findings in Article 2. There is belief in an idealized accent or dialect, which relates to the widespread belief that only American and British accent can be taught and presented correctly. Some people believe that certain accents are much more genuine than the others. LP students' anxiety of being badly evaluated by the teacher and peers is exacerbated or worsened by professor pressure. Language discrimination also restricts and limits class participation, interaction quality, understanding of new concepts and knowledge, as well as motivation for the language and course. It also creates language stratification, where students are divided into groups based on specific linguistic competency levels. Many international academies accept and agree in standard language ideology, which is the ingrained conviction that there is just one correct form of English, which is established by socio-political powers. Lastly, fear, segregation, worry, and apprehension, among other emotions, are triggered by discriminatory attitudes. Now I will move on to similarities and differences in both articles. Now I'll be presenting similarities in both articles. The first one is English as a dominant language, where fluency in communicating using English language will determine how people perceive them. The second one is experience discrimination because of their social background. And lastly, subjects of discriminations consist of learners. Now I will move on to differences, which I'll start with article number 1. Which is the purpose of the study is to examine the experiences of international marriage and family therapy students facing language and cultural bias from clients. The participants consist of 8 international marriage and family therapy students who were interviewed. The focus is international students facing discrimination from their clients, which questioning the FMT students' capability in doing their job. And the findings is clients would rather avoid from having international therapists since they assume that the therapist will not understand them completely because of the language barrier. Now article number 2. The purpose of the study is to examine how linguistic discrimination influences students' academic performance in the English teaching program at Foundation Universitaria Luis Amigo in Medellin. Excuse me if I pronounce it wrongly. And the participants is to find out what attitudes and behaviors evolve within the classroom. 104 students and 5 professors were interviewed. The focus of this article is students' academic achievement in the English education program is influenced by linguistic discrimination, and the findings is discriminatory attitudes, whether held by instructors or classmates, have an impact on academic achievement.
Okay, hello, my name is Vera Carol Yap with the metric number 204109. I'll be presenting the next part, which is strengths and weaknesses of both articles. So in Article 1, there are a total of 8 strengths that were found, and I'll try to explain each and every one of them in detail in the next slide. The first strength found in Article 1 is that the abstract provides a clear overview of the research. So the abstract in Article 1 is very brief but full of information. It briefly goes over the methodology of the research, as well as including a brief summary of the findings. So this allows the readers to get a clear understanding of what the research will be about. The second strength found in Article 1 is that it has a good introduction to the study. So in the introduction section, the background of the study is written clearly by providing a background to the topic and core issue of the research. It touches on the previous issues that have also emerged related to the language of international therapists. It also mentions some of the issues currently faced by international therapists, such as prejudice and biases. Aside from that, at the end of the introduction section, the goal of the research is also stated. So this allows the reader to understand what the paper will mostly focus on. So the third strength found in Article 1 is that it also has used proper citations. As we can see from the example, it uses the correct citation format. And each paragraph includes multiple citations from various sources. For example, in this paragraph, there are a total of 3 different sources used for citation to support the argument made by the article. So the fourth strength found in Article 1 is that it has good literature review. It includes past studies related to the topic and issue proposed by Article 1. The cited articles are properly synthesized and concluded, and they were used to support the arguments of topic and issues evoked in Article 1. The fifth strength in Article 1 is that the study gap is defined clearly. As we can see from the example, the gap is stated clearly. The article highlighted that the issue of prejudice or discrimination specifically against international therapists from clients is yet to be explored and studied. This gap is also further highlighted and supported by the past studies that were cited previously. And next, the sixth strength found in Article 1 is that the results are presented very neatly. As you can see from the examples, the results are put into 9 categories, which are language barrier, cultural adjustment, intersectionality, language discrimination from clients, language ideology, emotional reaction toward language discrimination, and coping strategies. So this allows the readers to read and interpret the results more easily. The seventh strength found in Article 1 is that future recommendations are provided. So the article recommends future studies to expand on the study and seek to understand other international therapist ethnic groups other than Asian international therapists with American clients. The other recommendation is to consider more experience of international English-speaking therapists so that a better conclusion can be drawn for a similar study. Last but not least, the last strength found in Article 1 is that it also suggested solutions for language discrimination issues faced by international therapists. So there are a few possible solutions. Most of them suggest that international therapists need to constantly feel encouraged and supported by people surrounding them in English speaking skills, in order for them to feel safe and comfortable enough to give their best potential as a therapist. Although Article 1 has shown plenty of strengths, however, the research paper only focused on Asian international therapists working with American clients. So in the future recommendation section, the article itself suggests for future studies to include the experience from different ethnic of international therapists other than Asian ones. Okay, right now we move on to Article 2. So there's 3 strengths found. The first one is that Article 2 has good methodology. Second, the findings are presented neatly. And third, future recommendations are provided also. The first strength found in Article 2 is that it has a good methodology. The methodology section clearly explains how the research will be conducted. So the explanations on how the data are collected and analyzed are also provided in details, allowing the readers to have a clear understanding on how the research will go and be conducted. The second strength found in Article 2 is that the findings are presented neatly, as we can see from the example. There are 6 categories that the results are sorted into, which are standard language idealization, native speaker idealization, professor's pressure, esteeming one's own language level, discriminatory attitudes, and linguistic segregations. So this allows the reader to interpret the results more easily. Article 2 also provided plenty future recommendations like Article 1. So the first recommendation is to invite professors to reflect upon the way communication develops in the classroom to balance the affective filter and develop spaces for language interaction. So the second recommendation is for English teaching program at Van Lam to make a conscious effort to understand student background, culture, and life experiences in order to promote a more diverse classroom. Last but not least, it also suggested to explore issues and continue to promote social justice and democracy in classroom. So next we move on to weakness found in Article 2. So there's only one weakness that was found, which is the literature review is not clear. There's no specific section for literature review provided in the article, and the article also fails to provide past studies with the related topic and issue to support arguments for the paper. So right now we move on to the last part of the presentation, which is conclusion. In conclusion, both articles have provided helpful insights on language discrimination issues in different settings and environments. The two articles may differ in many aspects and are only similar in the main topic discussed, which is language discrimination, but both of the articles show that language discrimination is prevalent everywhere, no matter the background or demographics of the speakers. Language discrimination is a serious issue that could cause problems on the victims, as mentioned in the articles. Therefore, future studies should be done regarding this issue to help victims of language discrimination feel safer and more included. This is the page for our references. So that wraps up this presentation from Group 4. We want to thank you for taking the time to listen to us.